Now that we're ready to start vectoring, we're going to learn how to zoom in and out on the artboard, change your pen tool stroke to a different color, and get started on your classwork exercise number 1. Let me get the layers panel up. There it is. You should be on your vector trace layer. If you remember from our previous tutorial how we started out with the template layer, make sure that it is locked, and now we are on our vector trace layer. Basically, we are ready to start tracing on top of this shape. If you look towards the left, you'll see on our toolbar the magnifying glass. That's our zoom tool. If you like keyboard shortcuts, you can simply press the letter Z. Once you get your magnifying glass, there's a plus sign. That means when you click on your artboard, you're going to get closer and closer. But if you ever need to zoom out on a Mac, you can always hold down the Option key and it will change it to zooming out. If you're on a Windows computer, you can always hold down the Alt key and it will do the same function. So I'm going to actually zoom in. The cross is in the magnifying glass. Okay. A good thing to note on these exercises, they're really nice. They talk about the different icons for the pen tool, what that may or may not mean, how to continue a path, how to stop a path, how to add or delete anchor points. And you'll notice for each shape, it has directions with it. I'm going to go through a little bit of the first shape to get you started, and then for the next tutorial, we'll talk about how to save your work. But let's talk about the pen tool first. If you go over to the left-hand side on your toolbar, you'll notice the pen tool is to the left of your type tool. But what I want you to do is click on your pen tool icon, and I want you to hold it down with your mouse or your trackpad. And you'll notice that you get several different options here. So I have pen tool, add anchor point tool, delete anchor point tool, and convert anchor point tool. I'm going to make this into a little tear off menu, and what's nice is Adobe Illustrator, if you go all the way over to the right, you'll see a little arrow and a little dialog box that says tear off. I'm going to release my mouse, and look at that. I get a little tear off menu just for the pen tool. This is very convenient, very handy, very nice. Before we get started on this Christmas tree, we need to set up our stroke color. What do I mean by fill and stroke? Well, if you go down to the bottom of your toolbar, you'll see that there's a square that's white, that's in the front of us, and then there's a stroke square behind it, and it looks like it's an outline of a square with a red diagonal line through it. The one in the front represents, if I was going to make a shape with my pen tool, it would be filled with the color white. The square in the back is a stroke, and it represents the outline of that shape. For this exercise, try to pick a color for your stroke that's going to be very vibrant and bright. The reason why is because if you look all over your document, you'll see that the shapes you are tracing are black. So if you're using black for your stroke, it's going to be very difficult to see if the line that you're doing is correct or not. So I would really recommend using a bright color. I'm going to change mine and show you how to do that. I'm going to go to my back square for stroke with that red diagonal line through it. I'm going to double click. I have my color picker up. I'm going to make sure I choose something very vibrant. So I'm going to go to the top right corner of my red and press OK. We now see that our stroke, our outline square, the red diagonal line, it has disappeared and it is now completely in red. But I want to get rid of my fill because when I start tracing on this Christmas tree, I don't want it to be white because I want to be able to see through and only have that outline. Think of this as really similar to a coloring book page. You are essentially being a coloring book artist for this exercise. So to get rid of the fill color, in our case it's white, I'm going to click once so that way the square is coming towards me. And right below your fill and stroke squares you have color, gradient, and none. and I'm going to click on none. You'll notice that that red diagonal line is going through it now. So now I have a see-through path that has a red stroke, and that's exactly what I want. What's nice about this Christmas tree and all of the other different shapes on this page and your second page is that it gives you directions. So for the Christmas tree, it says click in every dot following the numbers. That seems simple enough. You'll also notice that for straight lines within Adobe Illustrator, it's really nice. It really is a matter of pointing and clicking when it comes to using the pen tool. So I'm going to go up to number 1, and I'm going to make a point, click and point. You'll notice that my Smart Guide, remember those things where they're green and they usually they do a good job at lining up everything, telling you where the center or where the right alignment is for a shape. It also tells you the different parts of paths. So we now just put an anchor down. An anchor is a point in Adobe Illustrator. So I clicked on the number 1. Okay, I'm going to go to number 2. Click on the number 2. We now see that that red line is starting to grow. This is the reason why it might be a little more helpful for you if you use a brightly colored stroke. You can probably see that in action right now. Okay, so it says to hold down the Shift key. Okay, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key and go to number 3. I just slid it over and I went straight to number 3. I'm going to go to number 4. And all I got to do is simply point and click. Okay, that's not exactly what I wanted. If you happen to run into a situation like this and need to undo something, you can always do Command Z, and it will bring you back to your previous point. Okay, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key. Whoa.